Writing variant ha standard. ED 53 yan. The day my husband called and casually told me he'd filed for divorce should have been. The moment I felt relieved. Instead, it felt like someone had kicked the air out of my lungs. I was sitting in my car outside a shopping center when my phone rang. His name flashed across the screen. After 12 years of marriage, I already knew what the call was about. We'd been fighting for months. Cold dinners, silent mornings, endless arguments that never seemed to solve anything. I answered, expecting another fight. What I got was worse. "Just thought you should know," he said calmly. "I filed for divorce this morning." For a second, I couldn't speak. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I was shocked. I'd spent weeks secretly preparing to file first, meeting attorneys, gathering financial documents, planning every detail. I thought I was the one in control. "What?" I finally asked. "You heard me." His voice was strangely relaxed. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm serious." The confidence in his tone made my stomach twist. I had expected him to beg for counseling, to ask for another chance, to fight for us. Instead, he sounded almost relieved. When the call ended, I sat there staring at my phone. Something wasn't right. My husband wasn't impulsive. He never made major decisions without a reason. And suddenly, I couldn't stop wondering what he knew. That night, I searched through old emails, bank records, and documents I'd ignored for years. What I found made my blood run cold, because hidden among the paperwork was evidence that suggested my husband had been preparing for this divorce far longer than I realized. And if what I was seeing was true, I wasn't the one holding all the cards anymore. Section 1 complete. Which section would you like next and how many words? Writing variant standard. Identity sexta sorsalbo. The next morning, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept thinking about those documents. For years, I'd handled most of our household finances. Not because my husband couldn't, but because he never seemed interested. At least that's what I thought. Now I wasn't so sure. I spent the entire morning going through old files, tax records, and account statements. The deeper I dug, the more uneasy I became. My husband hadn't just filed for divorce. He'd been preparing for it. For almost 2 years. There were copies of financial reports, property evaluations, business records, even consultations with legal firms dating back months. I felt sick. How could he have hidden this from me for so long? Then I found something that scared me even more. One of the folders contained screenshots, dozens of them. Text messages. At first, I didn't recognize the number. Then my heart nearly stopped. The messages were between me and Ryan, the man I'd been emotionally involved with during the roughest period of my marriage. Nothing physical had happened, but the conversations crossed lines I knew they shouldn't have crossed. Private jokes, late-night conversations, complaints about my husband, things that would look terrible in court. My hands started shaking. How did he get these? And more importantly, how many did he have? Suddenly, his calm attitude on the phone made sense. He wasn't worried. He wasn't surprised. He'd already built his case. That afternoon, I called my attorney. The moment I explained what I'd discovered, the room fell silent. Finally, she spoke. "Has he mentioned these documents?" "No." "Then he's waiting." "Waiting for what?" Her answer hit me like a truck. "Waiting for you to make a mistake." For the first time since receiving that phone call, real fear settled into my chest. I had spent months believing I was several steps ahead, but now it looked like my husband had anticipated every move before I even made it. And as I sat alone in my kitchen staring at those files, one terrifying thought kept repeating in my mind. If this was only the evidence I'd found, what was he saving for the courtroom? Section 2 complete. Which section would you like next? Writing variant standard? Dient 7 Mat 814. The week before our first court hearing felt like a slow-moving nightmare. Every day, I discovered another piece of evidence my husband had quietly collected. And every discovery made one thing painfully clear. The man I thought I knew wasn't the man sitting across from me anymore. For years, I believed he was passive, predictable, too trusting. Now I realized he'd simply been paying attention. While I was focused on my frustrations and resentment, he had been documenting everything. The late-night messages, the financial decisions, the conversations I'd forgotten ever happened. Nothing escaped him. The worst part? He never confronted me. Not once. He simply waited. By the time our attorneys exchanged evidence packages, I understood exactly how much trouble I was in. My lawyer called me late that evening. Her voice sounded tense. "You're not going to like this." My stomach dropped. "What now?" "He has witnesses." I felt my chest tighten. "Witnesses for what?" "For several claims regarding the marriage, financial decisions, and your relationship with Ryan." I couldn't speak. The room suddenly felt too small. I had expected a difficult divorce. I hadn't expected a carefully prepared legal battle. When the hearing day finally arrived, I walked into the courthouse feeling confident on the outside and terrified on the inside. Then I saw my husband. He looked calm, almost relaxed. While I was barely holding myself together, he sat quietly reviewing documents with his attorney. No anger, no bitterness, no visible emotion. That scared me more than if he'd been furious. The hearing began. At first, everything seemed normal. Then his attorney stood up. What happened next completely changed the direction of the case. One by one, documents were presented. Financial records, emails, messages, timelines. Every piece connected perfectly to the next. The judge listened carefully. My attorney fought back wherever she could. But every argument seemed to run into another document, another record, another fact. I felt myself sinking deeper into my chair. Then came the moment that truly broke me. His attorney displayed a message I'd sent Ryan nearly a year earlier. A message I barely remembered writing. But there it was, on a giant screen for everyone to see. My face burned with embarrassment. I wanted to disappear. For the first time since our marriage began falling apart, I realized something painful. I had spent years blaming my husband for everything. Yet I had ignored my own mistakes, ignored my own choices, ignored the damage I'd caused. The hearing ended hours later. As people began leaving the courtroom, I sat frozen in my seat. My attorney quietly gathered her papers. The outcome wasn't final yet. There would be additional hearings, more negotiations, more decisions ahead. But the momentum had clearly shifted. And everyone in that courtroom knew it. As I walked toward the exit, I felt someone step beside me. My husband. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me. Not with anger, not with hatred, just disappointment. The expression hurt more than anything else. Finally, he said something I'd never forget. "You thought this started when I filed?" I stared at him. "It didn't." His voice remained calm. "It started the day you stopped treating me like your partner." Then he walked away. I stood there watching him disappear down the hallway. And for the first time, I realized this divorce was never about one phone call. It was about years of choices, years of secrets, years of damage neither of us had fully acknowledged. But what I didn't know yet was that the biggest surprise of all was still waiting. Because a week later, new evidence would surface. Evidence that would expose a secret neither attorney had seen coming. And when that secret reached the courtroom, everything would change. Section 3 complete. Now tell me. Writing variant standard. ID 845-7. A week after the hearing, I thought things couldn't get any worse. I was wrong. My attorney called me early on a Tuesday morning. The moment I answered, I could hear excitement in her voice. "We found something." I sat up immediately. "What?" "It concerns your husband's business partner." My heart started racing. Over the next hour, she explained everything. While reviewing financial records, her team had discovered evidence that my husband's business partner had been secretly moving money through company accounts for years, millions of dollars. The fraud had been carefully hidden. But once investigators started looking, the trail became impossible to ignore. What shocked me most was learning that my husband hadn't known about it until recently. In fact, he had been gathering evidence against the partner at the same time he was preparing for our divorce. Within days, authorities became involved. The business partner resigned. Investigations followed, and suddenly the focus shifted. Away from our divorce and onto one of the largest financial scandals in our area. The discovery completely changed the settlement discussions. Assets that everyone thought were gone were recovered. Financial records were corrected, and the truth finally came out. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Neither of us got everything we wanted, but we both got something we needed: closure. The judge approved a fair settlement, and for the first time in years, the fighting stopped. After the hearing, I found myself standing outside the courthouse beside my ex-husband, the same courthouse where our marriage had officially ended. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I looked at him and said something I should have said years earlier. "I'm sorry." He stared at me for a few seconds. Then he nodded. Me too. That was it. No dramatic speech. No final argument. Just two people accepting the truth. As he walked away, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because I had won. Not because he had lost. But because the war was finally over. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see back then. Revenge isn't always destroying someone. Sometimes the greatest victory is surviving the betrayal. Facing the truth, learning from your mistakes, and walking away stronger than before. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. I lost a marriage, but I found myself again, and that was worth more than any courtroom victory.